Bollywood seems to be failing at drawing masses into theatres. The problem is more complex than absence of good cinema. Well, good cinema, of course, being a major concern. As a result, single-screen cinemas are struggling. Many single-screen theatres are now shutting down in parts of Bihar, Maharashtra and other areas of Hindi belt. There has been no exciting release for them since Pathan in January. There have been no small-budget successful movies as fillers. The massive competition from OTT business hasn't been very helpful either. This is not just a rural phenomena but also an urban hazard. For major Indian theatre chain owners are now struggling to sustain their business. What's exactly hurting the movie business? We will be discussing all of that and more. Joining me at this point in time is Taran Adarsh, who's an Indian film critic. Also on the show is Karan Taurani, who's a senior VP at Elara Capital. With me in the studio is my colleague Krishnakumar. Krishna, coming to you first. And the basic premise of this entire discussion is that Hindi cinema is not giving us returns as was expected of them. What's hurting them?
Right, and if you see, if I can begin with a specific example, like a multiplex chain like PVR Inox, where Hindi movies, the market share of them being screened at PVR Inox cinemas across the country is down by 17%. And in general, the performance of Hindi movies have been down so much because the year began on a good note. It had it had a huge Hollywood release like Avatar: Way of Water, which did excellent business at the screens, and you also had Pathan, which did in excess of 1,000 crore rupees, which is an absolute all-time blockbuster as far as Hindi cinema is concerned. But then the question is, even after Pathan, the question is how many more Pathans can Hindi produce? It needs to keep producing more and more Pathans, and clearly it's fallen way behind. Absolutely. After Pathan. No clear box office hit since Pathan, and with the influx of so much of regional cinema and also foreign language cinema these days. Forget about foreign language cinema for a bit, especially regional cinema. Hindi is ceding space to regional language cinema, and the problem is that the single screens that you're talking about, that is frequented by people who are watching only Hindi cinema largely, and that's where the failure of the performance of Hindi cinemas at the movie theaters shows up more clearly.
And before we go to our guests, we are yet to get them on the show. I want to basically understand from you, the entire premise of this conversation, as I alluded to earlier, was the fact that Hindi cinema is just not doing well. So you talked about Avatar: The Way of Water, which of course being a Hollywood movie, not a Bollywood movie. In Bollywood specifically, since Pathan, there have been many releases, to take a few names, being the Bhola, which was recently released, Hit, which was released, but all of these small to big budget movies, some of them remake of Southern cinema, have failed to perform. So essentially hinting at, and there is a trend here. There is a trend here that post-pandemic, people are more and more going back home, watching movies that have been released later on OTT platforms, as opposed to spending more and going out of their convenience. So they're not going out at all.
Because the thing is that these movies need to bring in the audience the first 2 weekends and the first 2 weeks. That's where the entire game is. How did it perform in the opening weekend? How well did it improve, or how well it is able to sustain itself over the course of the next 1 or 2 weekends? And the game is largely played within the first 2 or 3 weekends for how well a movie does in the movie halls. And clearly, you had movies do decent business, 100 odd crore rupee kind of a business. But let me give you a metric. Shweta, for example, in Tamil cinema, the top star over there, Thalapathy Vijay, if his last movie was considered a movie that did not do well at the box office, guess how much it made? Over 200 crore rupees. Okay. Over 200 crore rupees. So, because that's within just the Tamil Nadu market, and considering that as an outlier, the Hindi
clearly, there is some sort of disengagement between the Hindi market and the southern market. So while on one hand, southern market seemed, and with struggling movies, a movie that you consider to not be successful is clocking in 200 crore rupees in profit, an Indian movie, 100 crore would be a big deal.
Yeah. In Hindi, for example, Bhool Bhulaiya 2, which released during the pandemic, it made 175 crore rupees, which was considered a super hit, at that stage. And that's even fine too. But that was, bear in mind, is in the recovery stages from the pandemic, from the lockdown. So Bhool Bhulaiya 2's 175 was okay. But then all of that changed with Pathan walking in and saying, and Pathan literally told you that if you make a good enough Hindi film that is attracting audiences from across the board, then you can make 1,000 crore rupees plus. That's what Pathan showed you. Now, we're not saying that every film needs to make 1,000 crore rupees, but there needs to be enough of these 200, 300, 500 crore rupee films, coming in, every month, to shore up that interest levels that you're talking about. Instead of, the Hindi movie watching audience looking at a movie's trailer and going that, I'll watch this when this releases on OTT. From there, you need to change that to like, I'm going to watch this when this comes to the movie halls first.
Right.
So, which has clearly not happened since Pathan, and it's problematic because Hindi cinema already had a very dry spell right up to Pathan. And and the hope was that post Pathan things will change for the better. But right now it seems like Pathan was a flash in the pan as far as Hindi cinema is concerned.
Absolutely, a flash in the pan there, Pathan. But we understand the need, and Karan, correct me if I'm wrong, we understand the need for small budget successful movies to revive cinemas. We know that revenues are dwindling. Many single screen theatre are closing every other day, either temporarily or permanently, for the lack of a filler movie, what is essentially described as a small budget movie that can drive people to theatres. In absence of that, a big success like Pathan, and once the success fades away, there is nothing to fill screens, and owners are left with no choice but to essentially close them down, so either temporarily or permanently, which hurts the business.
Yes, absolutely. I think, so if you look at the business, I think where we are coming from in the pre-COVID era, you had small, medium budget films, having a sizable contribution in terms of overall Hindi box office. I mean, there were films like, films which were made, which were content-driven stories by actors like Ayushmann Khurrana, Vicky Kaushal, etc. These were made at a budget of 40 to 50 crores, and they were all garnering collections of, 100 crores plus. What has happened to these films is that currently their collections are in the range of 20 to 30 crores, and that's the big struggle that we see. And also, if in terms of box office share, which I was pointing out, 65% of the Hindi box office collection in the pre-COVID era was from these kind of films, which has now come to about 20 odd percent or maybe 15 odd percent. So this is a clear shift which has happened. And I think more than large budget films, I think these are the kind of films which are hurting the industry in a very big way. Because large budget films, we've always seen numbers of 300, 400, 500 crores. And you typically cannot have every large budget film doing very well. So maybe in a year, you've got say 15 to 17 large budget films which are coming. Out of that, maybe 10 or 12 will fire. And they will have a collection of 200 to 50 crores on an average. So that's about 2.5 crores. But the balance gap of 2,000 crores is the catch here, because I think this 2,000 crore, which was earlier a number of around 2,000 crores in the pre-COVID days, today that has come to 200 crores or 250 crores rather. It's 80% fall. So I think that is what is hurting the industry more often than not. And the big question mark is, when will this trend change? Because we don't foresee that this trend will change in the near term. Because clearly people are not in the mood of watching small medium budget content on cinemas and paying hefty ticket prices.
I want to understand what's driving people's mood. Why are they not watching? We are also joined by Taran Adarsh, who's an Indian film critic, very famed at that. Taran, appreciate you taking time out. I want to understand from you, what exactly is driving people to sit back home and not go out and watch small budget movies that have also failed massively in the past quarter of months? What is not working for small budget movies?
Well, I think I would not say that it's just small budget films or big budget films that are not working. Hindi films are not working. And I think the reason for that could be bad content. Let's face it. Post Pathan, there were a lot of expectations from films like Shehzada and Selfie. But both the films, I mean, one starring Kartik Aaryan after Bhul Bhulaiya 2, and Akshay Kumar, of course, who's a top A-lister, both sank at the box office. And I think that sent shockwaves. Shockwaves because also because both films were expected to take in a very good opening at the box office, but they did not. Somewhere down the line, the audience can make up their mind whether or not to watch a film based on the trailer of the film. And that has to be tempting enough. That has to be that has to have a magnetic pull to bring the audience to theaters. Something like that was lacking in those two films. And of course, the content was also missing. I'm not denying that. But if you look at the number of films that have really released this year, be it Kisi Ka Bhai Kisi Ki Jaan starring Salman Khan or Bhola starring Ajay Devgan also, which did not work at the box office, after the initial curiosity, I think it's because of bad content. And I think we need to blame ourselves, not the audience, for not coming to theaters. somewhere down the line, the fault lies within us, the Hindi film industry, for not giving the audience what they expect. And what they expect is entertainment, larger-than-life movies, affordable ticket rates, affordable F&B pricing, and of course, great content. But we are lacking on all these fronts. I think that's the reason why there has to be some correction somewhere. And over a period of time, the content needs to be. I think we need to think and rethink about the kind of films that we are making, because as you know, and as everyone knows, we have the audience is watching a lot of films, not just from the international circuit, but also from the local cinema. Be it Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada, Bengali, Punjabi, Gujarati, any and every film that could excite them on the OTT. And I think the choices are, the audience has a lot of choices today. And if you don't deliver in terms of content, your films are bound to flop at the box office. And that is not a surprise at all. You know, this year the percentage of flops has gone up from 95, from last year was around 90% to 95% as of now, which is shocking. But then, you know, over the years, if you notice, we've been lacking in content. And that's the reason why. I mean, I have been observing from 70s and 80s. In the 70s and 80s, when the stars like Amitabh Bachchan, Shashi Kapoor, Dharmendra used to rule the roost, they used to have 5 and 6 films a year, releasing in a year. And the success ratio of films, of Hindi films at that point of time was 60 and 70%. But it has come down to just 3 and 4% now. Now, at this moment, that means something is going wrong somewhere. And I think we need to blame the content for it. The star system is another evil that needs to be sorted, the star pricing. We need to correct it. I have said that often, that we need to correct the prices of the stars, we need to correct the prices of the tickets, and we need to concentrate on the content. If we don't do that, the audience are going to go back to watching films on OTT, and I think that's going to be a big fall for the Hindi film industry.
Right, Taran, this is Krishna over here from the studio. I wanted to ask you, things are looking rather bleak at this point in time, but are there any big hopes for the Hindi film industry going forward? As far as this year is concerned?
I mean, every time that I have seen, every time that people write obituaries for the Hindi film industry or write off the Hindi film industry bounces back. Let me add here, the charm of the big screen can never fade. And entertainment, if you ask me, can never go out of fashion.
So tell us, in terms of projects to expect from the Hindi film industry, from where,
I'm optimistic for every film. Did anyone expect Kerala Story to cross 200 crores? Mm-hmm. Did anyone expect a film like Vicky Kaushal, the film starring Vicky Kaushal and Sara Ali Khan?
Zara hatke, zara
bachke. Sorry, I was not getting it. Zara hatke, zara bachke. Yes, sorry. That was supposed to be. Everyone was saying within the industry that this film should be released on OTT. Why are they releasing it in theaters? And even the people I knew were talking to this film can't do more than 10 crores and 15 crores. They have written it off. Today it has crossed 50 crores. Going towards 60
Saw your
crores.
tweet on it, Taran. Saw your tweet on Zara Hatka Zara Bachke about how it beat all doomsayers' words. I want to ask, for example, there's a film like Gadar 2.
And I would like to add something here that don't underestimate any film. I mean, it could be a Kashmir Files, it could be a Kerala Story, it could be Zara Hatke Zara Bachke, or any forthcoming film, because the audience is very unpredictable and box office is very unpredictable, and that's the beauty of our business. Because every time you write off a film, every time you write off Hindi cinema bounces back. Shah Rukh Khan, after a spate of flops, after a spate of non-openers, a film like Pathan, which is the highest grossing Hindi film in India in terms of net box office collection. And I think that's a huge achievement. And I think down the line, we will be surprised with a lot many films coming in and, taking the chair from Shah Rukh Khan and sitting. And a lot of actors could be the next ones to be sitting on the throne.
Right. Taran, the only thing I was asking you was that any particular films, for example, we have a Gadar 2 coming up. You remember the kind of box office earthquake it was when the Gadar 1 released? It even made more money than Lagan. So from specific films that you're looking, which will turn the tide for Hindi film industry?
You won't believe this. Just half an hour back, I was talking to a very prominent exhibitor. And I was telling him that, when Gadar released, And at that point of time, as you know, that it was with Lagan at that point of time. And a lot of journalists, a lot of people I know within the industry were rooting for Lagan and were writing off Gadar. But Gadar, I mean, in terms of business, was miles ahead of Lagan. And even today, when it's released in repeat run, it's doing exceptionally well. Of course, the number of screens and number of shows have increased over a period of time. It was just a film, not to rake in money. It was re-released right now, not to rake in money, but for the recall value. Because the second part is expected. Now, the second part is again clashing with Animals. And of course, there's one more film of Akshay Kumar that has joined the party called OMG 2, Oh My God 2. So it's two companies he is proud, I feel, always. But then let's see, one film might shift to a later date. But yes, clashes are inevitable. You know, and I think the good film will work. And who knows, all films could work. I mean, you know, as I said, box office is very unpredictable. You never know if the audience likes any film. I remember when Sholay had released, a small film had come in from somewhere. And every time Sholay used to be screened in those smaller centers or even bigger centers, that smaller film by the name of Jai Santoshima used to give a run for the money to a film like Sholay. And that, in those days, was magic. Because I think no one expected Jai Santoshima to actually take on a film like Sholay, which was the biggest show on earth. I mean, it was supposed to be called at that point of time by the writers of this film. And that film did huge business at the box office. So today, I mean, I think never underestimate any film, never underestimate any star. There could be any star, there could be any film, there could be any director who could just walk past and claim to be the highest grosser or the highest grossing film.
Okay. Okay. You know, this is extremely interesting because there is a changing palette for consumption that we are looking at this point in time, Karan, and I want to quickly bring you into the conversation. Essentially, movies that were expected to do well, for example, a Bhola or a Shahzada, which were remake of Southern films, and remake worked well for India for a limited period of time, and many, you know, producers and directors were hoping to replicate that success, did not happen. So a changing palette, audience palette has been seen post-pandemic. Essentially, I think going back to what Krishna also pointed out, it's more convenient for people to watch the same movie sitting at home. But these movies were not able to drive them out of home, out of their comfort zones.
Yeah, I think this is a structural trend here. It is a sign to worry because I think you know, if films don't perform well consistently, and I'm specifically again talking about these small and medium budget films, which are a problem, you might you know, go towards the US model where, you know, people actually go to cinemas, you know, once a month or once in 6 weeks, and the frequency actually comes down sharply. So again, the point is that it is not going to be easy for these films to make a comeback. A film like Zara Hatke Zara Bachke obviously did well. It was a small medium budget film, but the reason for that is very clear, that you had offers there in terms of buy one get one free. So if you exclude that, I think the collections of that film also remain to be below par. So I think there's a clear shift in terms of the audience habit changing. Audiences really want to watch only compelling content. They actually want to pay for ticket prices wherein the content is large scale in nature. There is 3D, there is 4DX, everything put together. It is worth their time and effort, you know, in terms of going into a cinema hall. So definitely it's not going to be easy. This is a structural trend, because if this kind of a thing was there for 2 months, 3 months, one would have said that, okay, things are going to come back. But what we've seen in the last 12 to 15 months, this is something that we have never seen in the pre-COVID era. I mean, historically, you know, when multiplexes have been there in the systems in the last 15 to 20 years, we haven't seen this kind of a poor run in terms of in the box office. So I think it's the need of the hour to change the content ecosystem, to change the economics of films, to actually provide better quality of films. I think remakes are a big no-no. I think franchise-based model is the next big thing going ahead. South films doing well in the Hindi market, that is a very big trigger which is there. So these are certain triggers that one needs to work around if, you know, you were to see some kind of success going ahead for content.
Okay. Before I bring in Taran into this conversation, I also want to quickly understand, where are we in terms of recovery of tickets and footfall? Are we back to pre-COVID levels? Karan?
This is for me or for...
I think both of you can come in. We'll begin with Karan.
Yeah, so if you, oh sorry, the name is confusing, Karan and Taran. So yeah, I mean, if you look at
Right.
if you look at the footfall recovery, I think what is happening right now is that we are somewhere closer to about 70% footfall recovery. Now this recovery is primarily on like-to-like basis, assuming the same number of screens that a multiplex would had. And generally, going ahead, we see this momentum moving towards 75 to 80% in the next financial year, primarily because of more large budget films which are lined up, and also primarily because of some kind of change in content we are seeing. Films like Animal, Adi Purush, these are differentiated stories. These are not primarily remakes of South. So I think there will be some respite, in terms of footfall recovery. Again, but the growth perspective, I think, single screen pressures remains to be there, because once you move towards a model which is kind of selective in nature, once the number of films that are doing well in a particular year actually come down, single screens are not favored because they can't do multiple programming. I mean, they have a constraint wherein they've got large number of seats, and that's why occupancies are always low. So films have to be sleeper hits on a consistent basis if they were to come back on track. So I think this trend of single screen shutdown might actually continue. We have already screened, PVR Inox. They've announced closure of 50 screens, and going ahead, if things don't pick up in terms of content, we might see a further downward revision in terms of their guidance for screen addition. So clearly, if you see India as a country, we were at 12, 13,000 screens about 10 years back. Pre-COVID times, we were about 10,000 screens. Now we are somewhere around 8,500 screens. So the number of screens are dwindling, and that's primarily to do with the demand which is there, the content which is there.
Okay. So, Taran, therefore, it appears to me that the road ahead perhaps is only paved for multi-screens. Single screens dying in absence of enough breather in terms of small budget movies that are doing well for exhibitors, and many are being closed down. The way we started this conversation with the fact that many are being closed down in the Hindi belt, appears to me that the road ahead is only for multi-screen. So if one movie doesn't work out, you've got another screen that is showcasing another movie that could work out.
The sad part is, and I'm being very vocal here when I say this, is that we have been making films targeting the metro audience, and that is the reason why our films are not working at maybe at non-metros or the Hindi belt, as we call it. The reason we are not making those kind of films is because we think that the revenue generated from multiplexes is too big, and single screens really don't contribute much. But people are forgetting, and a lot of producers are forgetting the fact that, a film like Zara Hatke Zara Bachke, for that point, is working so well in places which is beyond metros also. And I think that is the reason why people, and these films that connect with the audience, even in smaller towns, are a must today. If we don't make those kind of films, if we make films targeting the Bandra to Warsaw audience, as we put it in Mumbai lingo, I think that's going to be a complete downfall for the Hindi film industry. You need to think broader. You need to think pan-India in terms of content, pan-India in terms of entertainment, pan-India in terms of, and I think, a film like Adi Purush or Animal and Gadar 2, or for that matter, the forthcoming film that I would Tiger 3, these films could really break the barriers. They could go beyond the metros, and I'm sure they will go beyond the metros and score big numbers. But it's over we can't really rely on just one Pathan or one Kerala story or one Zara Bachke to do the magic. We need multiple films of, multiple successful films to actually do the trick. And I think time will come when, I always say that, raat kitni andheri kyun na ho, savera to hona hi hai. So it may be pitch dark right now. The Hindi film industry may be having a very gloomy scenario at the moment. But, there could always be that silver lining somewhere, or waiting for the dawn to come in, and we could just, be back on track. It's a matter of time. We need to, put our house in order first. We need to make better films. We need to make films that cater. Why do films like RRR, KGF 2, Bahubali 1 and 2 work, not just in metro but pan-India across A, B, C centers? It's because they could appeal to every person out there who's wanting to watch a good film.
Right.
Somewhere down the
very
line,
interesting, Taran.
you know,
Very
a film like
interesting
Gadar
point.
2, Gadar,
Right.
sorry, not Gadar 2, Gadar is working right now. And, you know, a lot of people felt, even when I was talking to these studios yesterday, they said, you know, we thought, you know, and even Anil Sharma told me yesterday evening, you know, I thought, you know, maybe it could just work in single screen. But multiplex people are clapping it, clapping over the scenes that, you know, that Sunny Deol ka hand pump ka scene and Hindustan Zindabad, Tha Zindabad, Hai Zindabad Rahega. Now to see that thing happening in multiplexes also, you need to have that kind of content.
Right.
The audience has always been the same. They have become more ruthless today. They can write off a film because they have alternatives today in terms of OTT or even social media is
you
so
know,
entertaining
Taran,
and interesting.
just alluding to something very interesting that you pointed out, and that is the fact there is not much relatability, Krishna. And I want to quickly bring you into the conversation. Taran pointed out a variety of southern cinema that is doing better than a lot of Hindi movies, essentially because people are able to relate to these movies. There is a sense of relatability. So either, you know, it's where I'm from, what I do. It is a representation of me as an individual, and therefore I'm going to go and watch it.
Right. That's what art is supposed to be at the end of the day, isn't it, Shweta?
Be it in India, of society and culture.
Be it in India, be it Hollywood, be it anywhere. And if Bollywood is not doing that, or Hindi cinema is not doing that, then that's really sad. The fact that Hindi-speaking people find other language cinema more relatable tells you a story of what's been happening. And Taran has pointed out, nail in the head, you know, this Bandra to Warsaw filmmaking, which is, you know, sort of gripped, you know, Hindi film industry. And what is meant by that expression is that highly, you know, upmarket urban consumers, NRIs, you know, those are whom the target audience of most of these, you know, Hindi cinema seems to be. Whereas in the South, if you think about it, there has been a long tradition, especially in Tamil movies and Telugu movies, to make these mass commercial cinema. But at the same time, don't go with the adage that leave your brains at home kind of cinema. Anything that's mass and popular doesn't have to be absolutely mind-numbingly dumb. So they've been perfecting the art of making intelligent commercial cinema for the last 3 decades. And if you see since the 90s onwards, you know, since the advent of this NRI filmmaking onwards, the DDLJ onwards, in Hindi cinema, they've been content making the content that, you know, NRIs you know, will love, and not forgetting the fact that there are so many Indians from India living in India who want content, big screen content that they can relate with. Okay. And that you know, a lacuna has just blown out, is blown out of proportion to the point where, you know, a South film being dubbed in Hindi is able to bring people into movie theaters in the Hindi belt, whereas original Hindi movie made in the Hindi language is not being able to draw people to the movie theaters.
Absolutely. And Taran, I want to understand, what is the problem here? Is there absence of enough scripts? Is there absence of enough, you know, producers who are backing small budget good scripts? What exactly is the problem?
You know, the problem, as I said, lies within us. You know, he just mentioned about Hindi films, the South Indian films that are dubbed in Hindi. And I would like to point out a film called Pushpa. Pushpa, the Hindi version, starring Allu Arjun, released 2 years ago. And that film was not promoted in the Hindi belt. Allu Arjun came to Mumbai on Thursday. Imagine the film is releasing on Friday. They got the censor certificate on hand. It was released at a handful of screens. But the power of the film was so strong that it grew with word of mouth. And the multiplexes and the single screen started multiplying in terms of screens. Also, I'd like to add here is that film was released in direct opposition to a film called Spider-Man. And also, a week later was a very big Hindi film called 83. And imagine, Pushpa stood out and did phenomenal business at the box office, the Hindi version. No one expected it. No one expected it. I'm sure Allu Arjun also, when I spoke to his father at that point of time, was not expecting great numbers from the Hindi belt. But, you know, as I said, box office can amaze you so many times. And that was one film that really stood out because of its content, because every person could relate to it. There was, as Krishna rightly said, you don't need to make films that, you know, you could just leave your brains at home and make masala films just for the heck of it. No. People want entertainment, but, you know, Rajamouli's films, Pushpa, or for that matter, KGF franchise, these films are loaded in entertainment. And that's what people want to watch. Somewhere down the line, the Hindi film producers have forgotten it. I mean, there was, if you recall, there was an Amitabh Bachchan Film Festival recently on a few months back, where all his old-time classics were screened in, at PVR or select locations of Mumbai. And believe it or not, they ran to packed houses. Films like Amarendra Anthony, films like Ron, and people are dancing on Khai Ke Paan Banaras Wala. The generation of today was dancing, and Satte Pe Satta. You know, that somewhere down the line we are missing that magic in our movies. And that's the reason why films are flopping left, right and center. And we need to blame ourselves. Why should we blame the audience? The audience nahi aana chahti, audience nahi dekhna chahti. Audience to hai. People want to watch movies. Hindi cinema can never go out of fashion. Big screen entertainers can never go out of fashion, provided we give the audience what they want. हम उन पर वो थोप रहे हैं. We are thrusting our nonsensical movies to them. We are giving bullshit stuff, sorry to use this language, and that's the reason why our films are flopping left, right and center. And we expect the stars की वजह से film देखने आ जाएंगे. No, not at all. The biggest of stars cannot guarantee after a few initial shows today. At a point of time, they could guarantee after the first weekend. Today, after the initial shows, the word of mouth spreads faster than fire through social media, through maybe your WhatsApp message to a friend that, this film is it's terrible, don't watch it. And so just, think faster than Titanic.
Taran, I have only one question to ask you. We've seen, you make a very important point. People like Manmohan Desai, they made these movies which, A center, B center, C center, rural, city,
Absolutely.
all kinds of audience could come and watch it together, and hence, and somewhere Hindi cinema has lost that art. But I want to remind of the fact that there was a film called Dangal, which did exactly that you're talking about, a village in Haryana where it was a hit, and in the big cities it was a hit. Hindi cinema was doing it right up until even 2016 with Dangal. But something seems to have gone awry since then.
Not just Dangal, but a lot of films that were working at that point of time were doing it right. They were getting the content right. But somewhere, I think we started making films for the OTT. A lot of stars started shifting their focus to OTT also, getting inspired by the international stuff or whatever films that they were planning. A lot of remake culture also came in between, which is one of the reasons why the Hindi film industry collapsed in the recent times. A lot of remakes have not worked at the box office, be it Salman Khan's film, be it Ajay Devgan's Pozla, be it a lot of other films, Shehzada and also Selfie, all remakes. But I'd like to add here that, when you just mentioned Dangal, even I remember at that point of time, a lot of people felt that this might really not work beyond maybe metros, or maybe it won't work. Who would want to watch a story and a very lengthy film, but, it works magic at the box office. And I think that's one of the reasons, because the power of content has to be there to keep the audience glued. And there have been so many instances. You just mentioned Manmohan Desai.
Okay, we seem to have lost Taran there, but very interesting point of view. Of course, we've come up and come away a little further away from a time where we were making movies that everybody would watch, to making movies that nobody is watching. And there is a change in palette now. There is a change in consumption pattern, and all of that has resulted in single screen theaters specifically closing down. What moviegoers need, and to borrow from The Dirty Picture, the movie where Vidya Balan very fancily says that people need entertainment. And at this point in time, Krishna, it appears that they're not getting that entertainment from Hindi movies in particular.
Definitely, because Hindi movies in the last, say, 10 to 20 years has been looking down upon, condescending upon the term entertainment, as if entertainment meant something that you're not supposed to do to get people into the theaters. A good movie has to be not entertaining. A good movie should not have songs and dances. A good movie does not have people talking in loud volumes. These are artificial limitations that people have completely that has led to the point where you're not making movies that connect with the audience. And in that sense, right now, the Hindi cinema per se faces an existential crisis, because you have to win at home first, right? Before Hindi goes on to win Oscars and other stuff, exactly. Hindi cinema has to win with its own Hindi cinema goers. And it is really terrible that single screen movie theaters in the Hindi belt of India are shutting down because of not enough good Hindi movies coming in. Good in the sense, movies that are exciting the average Hindi cinema goer to make that trip to the movie hall. It's an extremely worrisome, and it'll be even interesting because the last time that Hindi movie goer went to the movie hall was probably for RRR, which is a Telugu movie dubbed into Hindi.
And you know, that brings me to a very important question. I think we're going to end it with that. Taran is back with us. Taran, I want to quickly understand from you, if there were some lessons that Hindi movie makers, producers, directors could draw from their southern counterparts, what lessons would they be?
Well, I think we need to learn to entertain our audiences back, and that would bring them back. You know, the line got disconnected, the call got dropped, but I was talking about Manmohan Desai, and I've had several interactions with Manmohan Desai at the peak of his career, and he used to mention to me that, you know, my funda is very clear, that I need to go, I watch my films sitting in the, you know, in those days we had the single screen and balcony and stall, and he said, I used to sit with the audience in stall and to enjoy a film. I think that was more important. He could relate to the audience, could make the kind of film that he wanted to, because he was sitting there observing and absorbing what was being, you know, he could see the audience reaction. And that's why you have classics like Amar Akbar Anthony and Parvarish and Naseeb and Dharamgir and so many films that he made. But in today's time, we are far away from reality. None of our producers, none of our directors, they actually bother to think, they are actually bothered as to what the audience wants.
Okay.
What they are bothered is, let's make the kind of film that we want to make and then give it to the audience. Sorry, it should be the other way around. Serve them what they want to watch.
Yes.
If you want to go, if you are looking for a desi food, you can't be served Italian or Chinese food. They would reject it.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. Taran couldn't have put it better. In fact, I know growing up in Chennai, Shweta, I can confirm what Taran is talking about. That's how every budding, aspiring filmmaker in Tamil Nadu or in Chennai would go about making a film. It's not about what I want to make. It's like what people are liking already. Can I make that in a way where I can infuse that with my individuality? Mm-hmm. Whereas in Hindi cinema, you're talking about people who go abroad and study or something like that. And they come back and they're like, I want to make a film that's like, you know, can be watched in Broadway in New York. It has to first run here, man, in Gaiety Galaxy, in Bandra, in Mumbai first, and then it has to go to New York. Okay. So, you know, I think that reverse integration hasn't happened. So
reverse integration and the need to come out and taste the reality, not live in silos, not think you've made a great masterpiece, because if nobody's watching it, you're not doing it good enough.